Take your life.
You ready, Mike? Yep. All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome on this nice rainy Monday. If you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance,
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so today is June 8th. This is the Commissioner's regular business meeting. And we're still following kind of some of the same things that we saw ahead. If you have public comment, go ahead and stay where you're at. And you can stand up and make your comments. And we'll go forward. So first thing on the agenda is public comment. Any public comment this morning?
Commissioners, my name is Cheryl Campbell. I'd ask in light of Friday's proceedings that you consider rejiggering it and removing Obert as chairman and name one or the other of you as chairman of the Broadwater County Commissioners.
Okay. Bobby?
I'm Bobby Meehan, Broadwater reporter. Along the same lines, I spoke with Mr. Lambert on Friday afternoon, and he referred me to speak to both of you because he said it was up to you what you were going to do as a commission, whether Ms. Obert would be on the board of commissions or if she would be chairperson. It would be up to the two of you. So I'd like to know what the plan for that would be.
Anybody else? Okay.
Yes, Commissioners, Tim Ravendall, resident taxpayer, and not too long ago after Commissioner Fulford came into office, one of the things that was brought to the front and center was to get a handle on the subdivision and road issues in the county. And I commended Mr. Fulford for bringing that to front and center, putting the spotlight on making improvements and corrections in how that was handled. Part of that process included White Horse Road, which covers and goes across my own personal property. White Horse Road is in some ways unique in Broadwater County because the center line of that road is not a division of property owners. The entire road is on one private property rather than split. On White Horse Road, our county attorney, Corey Swanson, brought forward a historic investigation, if you will, and really put out clearly that White Horse Road is a private road, privately maintained. In this process, Bureau of Land Management had constructed a parking area which turned into a campground at the end of White Horse Road. At that time when that was completed, I made contact with Mr. Scott Haight of BLM asking what their procedure was. And in that, I received a letter that explained that the county officials had indicated the status of that road made everything within order. Okay. Right now, as of June 7th, which I dated this yesterday, I submitted a letter to BLM field manager, Mr. Haight, to ask him to respond to what the BLM is going to do, considering the fact that the county does not own that road. It is not a public road, and that the increased use of that road based on what they have done has really caused more impact to the ability to maintain that road as well as ensure safety for the citizens. I could go on, but I'm going to make this real short. I'm going to give you a copy of the letter sent to to the commissioners. Copy goes to you, and this has been sent to BLM and excuse me, sorry. So I would just like to have that included in your record of making sure that we continue moving forward in the interest of doing things right. That's what it's all about on my side as a property owner. And I hope you will consider taking a look at that. I would expect that when BLM gets my letter, they will probably be contacting you. So I'm not trying to blindside you by giving surprise. This is something that has been a concern of mine since County Attorney John Flynn has been in office, and I'll cut it there. This needs to be continually moved towards doing it the right way. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin. Any more public comment? Anything to say?
No.
Okay, with that, we will move on. Is this for, do you have any minutes, Sam? Is this here for June 1st? Yep. Okay, we have the minutes for June 1st.
I'll make a motion to approve minutes as submitted.
And second that motion. Any public comment? Any public comment? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. We maxed out for people. We had our limit.
I'll be leaving, so should we expect any responses to the comments?
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't have a response for your comments. We haven't made that decision, so.
So you are working on speaking and figuring it out?
Yeah.
Okay. Right, thank you very much.
So we have received a signed MOU between the Fair Board and the Rodeo Board in relation to the maintenance out at the Fair and Rodeo grounds. And if everybody remembers, the Rodeo Association agreed to take care of mowing and watering out at the fairgrounds. And, the Fair Board has agreed to that, and I think that they're going to allow them to use the mower. So we received that. We have a software proposal from Tyler Technologies. And what this is the courthouse just recently had a server upgrade, and the old server still had, let's see, TaxWise and DocuPro on it, and it needs to be migrated to new servers. So Tyler Technologies is a company that does that for us, and the amount for that is $1,000. And that's something that has to happen so that they have access to those older documents.
I'll make a motion to approve the Tyler Technologies contract
Okay,
for the server.
okay, I will second that. Again, public comment. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. I have 3 letters here from DEQ and their water quality reports for the silos, and they have all showed no chloroform or ECOLI. Another letter from the DEQ, and I'll just read the heading portion of it, so it'll be self-explanatory. In a letter dated April 16th, 2020, the department updated the date of the public hearing associated with the opening of Montana's water quality standards for public comment to June 10th, 2020. The update letter gave options for attending this meeting remotely or in person at the Metcalf Building in Hill. Due to health concerns involving COVID-19, the public hearing will no longer have an in-person location and will be held entirely remotely. So information how to attend remotely is available in this letter if anyone is interested. Another letter from DEQ, and it is the department's intention to issue a wastewater discharge permit to the facilities listed in this notice, and the facility's name is the Stillwater Mine. Letter from Yellowstone Country, which is a dealership in Livingston, and to send some information on vehicles if you're interested in purchasing anything. We have regular claims here in the amount of $78,140.89.
I'll make a motion to pay claims and set them up.
Motion been made to pay the claims in the amount of $78,140.89. I'll second that motion. Any public comment? Hearing none. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, here's payroll in the amount of $171,316.50.
I'll make a motion to approve claims and set them up.
A motion been made to pay the payroll claims in the amount of $171,316.50. Any public comment? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We received a letter of payment of restitution from Bill Planner in the amount of $739.09.
Excuse me,
Yes.
Tim with Readout News. We've been asking several times to know what the status of that account is, current remaining balance. If there's any update on that. If you got a chance, you can get that to me, either email or some way, so I can update the people that are asking. That would be great. Thank you.
And magazine from Rural Montana. He will be available in the commissioner's office if anyone is interested. Also another some ministerial work. And I will need the minutes from May 26, 2020, the signed ones, to send in with this letter for the Montana Historic Preservation Grants Program. They just wanted a copy of those minutes in this letter so that they can approve that application. So I'll go ahead and read the letter. It says, whom it may concern, on May 26, 2020, the Broadwater County Commission hosted a public hearing on the Montana Historic Preservation Grant for the Placer School submitted to the Montana Department of Commerce by the Missoula Ranch on February 28th, 2020, and the required Montana Environmental Policy Act review. Following the hearing, the commission passed a motion to support the Montana Historic Preservation Grant application for the Placer School, concurred with the applicants Bob and BM Missoula, that the project met the Montana Historic Preservation Grant criteria for a categorical exclusion. The proceedings of the commission meeting were recorded and minutes of the meeting were approved. We understand the applicants will be submitting them to the Montana Department of Commerce as part of the record of environmental review, in keeping with Montana Historic Preservation Grant requirements. So this is Broadwater County Commissioners. So, I guess,
Sign this.
yeah, we can sign that. We'll give them a copy of the minutes, and then the application can go forward.
Yeah, that's my.
It's on the bottom of that page. Okay. Okay, next on the agenda is the Huth family transfer. Good morning, Nicole.
So you all have had a chance to look at this, this is the last review committee. If you have questions, now's a good time to ask those questions. I have a copy of the affidavit, or the actual affidavit, I'm sorry, you've seen a copy of it, and the family transfer. Any questions?
I don't have any issues or questions about that land transfer.
Like I don't either, so.
Somebody should make a motion to accept the Huth family land transfer.
I will second that motion. Motion's been made and seconded to accept the Huth family land transfer for the public pump. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, Happy Flats Manor subdivision request from the PAC.
So, same family, I'll go over to the questions on this. This is the Happy Flat minor subdivision, they're requesting that approval. If it's okay, we can just manipulate. And then we'll pass the minutes around. So this subdivision was given preliminary plat approval on January 27, 2020. Condition number 1, plans for sewage treatment and water supply shall be submitted to the Montana Department of Environmental Quality for review and approval. The certificate of approval shall be filed with the final plat.
With the signature there.
Number 2, prior to any development and or soil disturbance, a weed management plan for the proposed development shall be submitted to the county weed district for review and approval. All specifications and requirements of the approved plan shall be met.
All right, so that's interesting. I guess this brings up a point for maybe some future ones about soil disturbance. Weed management plan. Keep that in mind.
Number 3, prior to any development, a driveway approach permit shall be requested from the Montana Highway Department. All requirements of the approved permit shall be met. That's the packet of approval there for
It
number 2.
is. So I guess have they received that approval?
Yes, that is the approval.
This is approval for the second approach. I mean, that was kind of the.
I think that we're sticking with the one approach.
Weren't they supposed to remove an approach?
That's right, they were going to remove an approach and put in another approach.
And I think the
So this
new
is-
approach has been put in, but the other one has not been removed.
So is one approach going to service the 2 lots?
Yes.
Is that? That's going to work. So is this the one that they're going to use?
They're going to use this one.
This one here.
Previously was one down here
Right.
at the far end, which would
Yeah.
then require a shared driveway. To do this route, and that will one goes out, one goes out. I'm going to move on to 4 while you're reading that. I have nothing to pass around for 4. 4, the applicant will be required to submit the final plat drawings in electronic format to Broadwater County in ArcGIS, AutoCAD, and MicroStation format. Additional materials may be requested by the county in electronic format to facilitate review of application and changes. Number 5, the applicant and the Fire Protection Authority having jurisdiction shall use their best efforts to draft a fire protection plan specifically for this subdivision in accordance with Broadwater County subdivision regulations. The plan should be equally acceptable to the FPHJ, the applicant, and the county governing authority. The plan shall adequately address the fire risk analysis, all findings of fact, and appropriate mitigation measures. In the event the parties are unable to come to an agreement by the time of final plat submittal, the applicant shall become eligible to provide the per lot cash and fee for water supply as may be defined in the Broadwater County subdivision regulations in effect at the time. On the list there, they're proposing $1,000 per lot at time of lot. And that's been signed by the fire chief. Number 6, the final plat shall be prepared in accordance with applicable state survey requirements, Montana Subdivision Planning Act survey requirements, and the county subdivision regulations. Final plat here is signed and stamped by our examining land surveyor. Number 7. The book and page reference to the restrictive covenant filed with the county clerk and recorder shall be indicated on the face of the final plat. In addition, restrictive covenants, revocable or alterable only with the consent of the Board of County Commissioners, shall be placed upon the property and shall provide for the following. A, for the subdivision application, all lots shall be used for residential purposes only. B, notification of the potential health risk from radon concentrations and that such risk can be evaluated through soil tests and mitigated through radon abatement techniques incorporated into structures. C, a notification that all dwelling units within the subdivision should be constructed to specifications which meet or exceed equivalent provisions in the applicable state building code for this seismic zone, which is zone 3. D, any additional replacement or relocated utility lines shall be installed underground in accordance with county subdivision regulations unless otherwise determined by the utility provider. E, any exterior lighting shall be directed downward to minimize visibility beyond the property lines. F, a waiver of the right to protest to join a special district for the purpose of providing community water and or wastewater treatment system improvements and or maintenance. G, a restrictive covenant binding the landowner, any heirs, successors, and assigns, and all future owners of property within the subdivision, agreeing therein to hold Broadwater County harmless and indemnify Broadwater County from all claims, demands, obligations, suits, causes of action, damages, and liability, including the county's costs and attorney's fees arising in any manner whatsoever out of or relating to the existence, use, operation, repair, and maintenance of the following. So item 1, earthquake fault zone and any seismic activity, and number 2, water availability. H, all cats and dogs must be restrained, penned, or otherwise under the control of their owner at all times. I, notification of the presence of agricultural operations in the vicinity. J, each lot shall be maintained in a clean, attractive, and weed-free manner. Noxious weeds must be pulled, sprayed, or cut prior to seed maturity. K, a waiver of right to protest joining a rural improvement or maintenance district for the purpose of road maintenance, mosquito control, or equitably funding parks and maintenance of parks. L, address numbers shall be clearly marked at the driveway entrance to each lot and be easily identified from the road. M, a notification that lots in the subdivision may be subject to impact fees if in place prior to lot sales. H, prior to filing the final plat, the applicant shall A, provide proof that all taxes and special assessments assessed and levied on the property are paid for the current tax year, including any past delinquencies, and B, provide documentation, an abstract of title or platting certificate, showing that the applicant is the lawful owner of the property with the apparent authority to subdivide the same, showing the names of lien holders or claimants of record, and the written consent to the subdivision by the owners of the land, if other than the applicant, and any lien holders or claimants of record. And that is all I have.
Okay, so I think we've met the criteria for government review as in NCA 763608. Determining the impact on agricultural, water use facilities, local services, natural environment, wildlife habitat, public health and safety. And if the are in compliance with the survey requirements for local subdivision regulations and provisions of any easements, and if there is legal and physical access to each parcel. I don't have any further questions.
I don't have any questions.
Anything online?
I'll make a motion to approve the request for final plat approval for the Happy Flats minor subdivision.
Motion made and seconded for the final plat approval of the Happy Flats minor subdivision. Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Hearing none? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
No. They're all reversed.
Oh, this is one. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, this green trailer, that one also, sign that one also. The 2 milers and 2 papers.
Commissioners, just out of idle curiosity, where is this Happy Flats ballpark?
Is it often,
Off Highway 284, half a mile north of Durham.
Just curious.
We're done.
I think we're done with these, aren't we?
Thank you. Have any more for you to sign today? Three copies there. We have extras. Do you want Yes. Do each of you have your submittal document
We
with
do.
you, so you don't need me to pull the plat? It looks like you have everything there. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to start reading through this when, or if you're ready,
Yes.
okay? This is the findings of fact and order report for the Headwaters Minor Subdivision preliminary plat dated June 17th, 2019. The date of application was August 26, 2019. The date of sufficiency was March 10th, 2020. However, due to COVID-19, the developers granted an extension for the review timeline. This review period will end June 30th, 2020. Planning board meeting, we had 2 meetings, which this was an agenda item, May 20th, 2020 and June 2nd, 2020. The applicant is Jerry Olson, and he's here today with his wife, and the applicant's representative is Brown and Associates out of Butte, Montana. The proposed subdivision is located approximately 5 miles northwest of the town of Three Forks, Montana. The applicant proposes to develop 5 commercial lots from an existing 60-acre parcel. These lots will be served by individual wastewater treatment systems and individual wells. Access to the proposed subdivision will be off of Wheatland Road. The required preliminary review fee of $2,320 and the weed inspection fee of $250 have all been paid. The proposed subdivision is a first minor subdivision from a tract of record, therefore a public hearing is not required. The 5 lots created will range from 1.2 acres to 54.6 acres in size. The property is located in an area of agricultural, residential, and commercial properties. Review is performed pursuant to the Montana Subdivision and Platting Act, Section 76.3.101 through 76.3.614, Montana Codes Annotated, and the Broadwater County Subdivision Regulations. The proposed preliminary plat, Headwaters Minor Subdivision, as submitted by the applicant, together with the required supplementary plans and information, appear to satisfy the requirements of these regulations and comply with the Broadwater County Growth Policy Plan dated July 2003. A preliminary plat, vicinity map, and topographic map of the proposed subdivision have been provided. No rock outcroppings or the presence of bedrock have been identified on the property. The proposed subdivision is not in an area subject to flood hazard according to FEMA's floodplain map. These tracts will be served by individual wells and wastewater treatment systems. Review and approval will be performed by the Department of Environmental Quality for 4 of the 5 parcels, as they are less than 20 acres. The larger parcel has an existing well and wastewater treatment system. The lot owners will be responsible for disposal of their own solid waste. The subdivision residents will have the option of hiring an independent contractor to pick up their solid waste or transport it themselves to the Logan landfill, since they are not a part of the Broadwater County Solid Waste District. The property is currently part of a larger livestock operation. Lands to the north are commercial and residential, to the south are agricultural, to the east are agricultural, and that should also include commercial. There is a commercial lot right there to the east, and to the west are agricultural. This 5-lot subdivision will have a minimal effect on agricultural productivity, since no lots are being removed from agricultural production. According to the applicant, the proposed subdivision is not located on prime farmland as defined by the Natural Resource Conservation Service. This subdivision is considered to be compatible with surrounding uses, since the surrounding area is mostly commercial residential. No conflicts between the proposed subdivision and adjacent farm operations have been identified. This proposed subdivision should not interfere with the movement of farm machinery, operation of any irrigation systems, or diminish the availability or quality of water in the surrounding area. An environmental assessment was not required for this subdivision.
No hazards such as falls, slides, or slumps are indicated on the plat. There is no known seismic activity. No geological conditions which might affect the development, such as unsuitable soils, were identified within the proposed subdivision. There are no areas of marsh, grassland, shrub, or forest located on the property. Currently, there have been no noxious weeds identified on the property by the landowner. A noxious weed management plan application form is included in the preliminary plat application, but to date, it has not yet been approved. If in the future any noxious weeds are identified, they will be sprayed with the appropriate herbicide. The subdivision should have no impact on wildlife areas such as big game wintering range, migration routes, nesting areas, wetland, or important habitat for rare or endangered species. Because of the size of the parcels, the proximity to the highway, and the fact that only 5 lots are being created, any effects on wildlife should be minimal. A letter was sent to the Montana Historical Society and is included in the preliminary plat application. A response was received on September 16, 2019. According to Damon Murdo, Cultural Records Manager with MHS, there have been no previously recorded sites within the designated search locale. However, should cultural resource be discovered, MHS will be notified. A new subdivision road is planned for this development. All lots will have direct access onto this internal subdivision road to minimize the number of approaches onto Wheatland Road. This subdivision road must be engineered and constructed according to Broadwater County subdivision road standards prior to final plat approval. The subdivision road will have access from the existing county road, Wheatland Road. Prior to final plat approval, a traffic impact study should be performed to determine the adequacy of Wheatland Road relative to the traffic volume. Should this proposed subdivision increase traffic volume beyond the level of Wheatland Road's current construction capacity, the developer shall be required to pay the proportionate share of upgrades to Wheatland Road. Vigilante Electric will provide electrical service to this proposed subdivision. Phone service will be provided by CenturyLink. It is assumed that all utilities will be installed underground. The Three Forks Rural Fire District will serve the proposed subdivision. A letter written to the Three Forks Rural Fire District is included in the preliminary plat application. The developer is proposing to utilize the existing 500,000-gallon fire pond on tract C1. The nearest fire station is the Three Forks Fire Station, which is located approximately 5 miles south of this proposed subdivision. The Broadwater County Sheriff, located in Townsend, will provide law enforcement with mutual aid assistance offered by the City of Three Forks Police Department. The Broadwater Ambulance Service, with assistance by Three Forks Ambulance Service, will provide both ambulatory and emergency services. The Sheriff's Department and Broadwater Ambulance Service are both located approximately 30 miles northeast of the proposed subdivision. The Three Forks Police Department and Three Forks Ambulance Service are both located approximately 5¼ miles southeast of the proposed subdivision. Since this subdivision proposal is being submitted for commercial purposes only, no impacts to the Three Forks School District are anticipated. No residential structures will be allowed on these parcels, and therefore no students will reside there. This subdivision should be compatible with surrounding land uses, since the majority of parcels along this portion of Wheatland Road are for commercial purposes only. The close proximity to the heavily traveled Wheatland Road and US Highway 287 could pose a hazard, and landowners can mitigate any potential conflicts by constructing fences surrounding each property and installing appropriate signage. Since this proposed subdivision is a first minor subdivision from a tract of record, no parks or recreation facilities are required. It is hereby ordered that the preliminary plat for Headwaters Minor Subdivision is approved, subject to the conditions listed below. Final plat approval shall be contingent upon completion and compliance with these conditions. Number 1, plans for sewage treatment and water supply shall be submitted to the Montana Department of Environmental Quality for review and approval. The certificate of approval shall be filed with the final plat. Number 2, prior to any development and/or soil disturbance, a weed management plan for the proposed development shall be submitted to the County Weed District for review and approval. Number 3, prior to any development, a driveway approach permit shall be requested from the Broadwater County Road Department for the 2 subdivision road accesses onto Wheatland Road. Number 4, the internal subdivision road must be designed in accordance with the Broadwater County subdivision road standards and stamped by a professional engineer. A letter from the PE shall be provided to the county stating that the roads and any improvements have been constructed in accordance with the approved plans and specifications, and that he or she has completed an inspection of the roads and any improvements. Number 5, the internal access road shall be given a unique road name that is reviewed and approved by the County Planning Department. The name of the internal access road shall be shown on the face of the final plat and reflected in all documents of the subdivision. Number 6, prior to filing the final plat, a traffic impact study shall be performed on Wheatland Road to determine the adequacy and impacts the additional commercial traffic will have on the road. If it is determined that the traffic will exceed the current level of construction, the applicant shall participate in a proportionate share of the necessary upgrading costs for Wheatland Road from its intersection with US Highway 287 to the furthest point where Wheatland Road is adjacent to the subdivision property. Number 7, the applicant will be required to submit the final plat drawings in electronic format to Broadwater County in ArcGIS, AutoCAD, or MicroStation format. Additional materials may be requested by the county in electronic format to facilitate review of application materials. Number 8, the applicant and Fire Protection Authority having jurisdiction shall use their best efforts to draft a fire protection plan specifically for this subdivision in accordance with Broadwater County subdivision regulations. The plan should be equally acceptable to the FPHJ, the applicant, and the county governing authority. The plan shall adequately address the fire risk analysis, all findings of fact, and appropriate mitigation measures. In the event the parties are unable to come to an agreement by the time of final plat submittal, the applicant shall become eligible to provide the per lot cash in lieu fee for water supply, as may be defined in the Broadwater County subdivision regulations in effect at the time of submittal. Number 9, the final plat shall be prepared in accordance with the applicable state survey requirements, Montana Subdivision and Plating Act survey requirements, and the county subdivision regulations. Number 10, the book and page reference to the restrictive covenant filed with the county clerk and recorder shall be indicated on the face of the final plat. In addition, restrictive covenants revocable or alterable only with the consent of the Board of County Commissioners shall be placed upon the property and shall provide for the following. A, per the subdivision application, all lots shall be used for commercial purposes only. B, notification of the potential health risk from radon concentrations and that such risk can be evaluated through soil tests and mitigated through radon abatement techniques incorporated into structures. C, a notification that all dwelling units within the subdivision should be constructed to specifications which meet or exceed equivalent provisions in the applicable state building code for this seismic zone, which is Zone 3. D, any additional replacement or relocated utility line shall be installed underground in accordance with the county subdivision regulations unless otherwise determined by the utility provider. E, any exterior lighting shall be directed downward to minimize visibility beyond the property lines. F, a waiver of the right to protest to join a special district for the purpose of providing community water and or wastewater treatment system improvements and or maintenance. G, a restrictive covenant binding the landowner, any heirs, successors, and signs, and all future owners of property within the subdivision agreeing therein to hold Broadwater County harmless and indemnify Broadwater County from all claims, demands, obligations, suits, causes of action, damages, and liability, including the county's costs and attorney's fees arising in any manner whatsoever out of or relating to the existence, use, operation, repair, and or maintenance of the following. Sub-item 1, earthquake fault zone and any seismic activity, and number 2, water availability. H, all cats and dogs must be restrained, penned, or otherwise under the control of their owner at all times. I, notification of the presence of agricultural operations in the vicinity. J, each lot shall be maintained in a clean, attractive, weed-free manner. Noxious weeds must be pulled, sprayed, or cut prior to seed maturity. K, a waiver of right to protest joining a rural improvement or maintenance district for the purpose of road maintenance, mosquito control, or equitably funding parks and maintenance of parks. L, address numbers shall be clearly marked at the driveway entrance to each lot and be easily identified from the road. M, a notification that lots in the subdivision may be subject to impact fees if in place prior to lot sales. Condition number 11, prior to filing the final plat, the following improvements shall be installed or otherwise guaranteed. A, any necessary improvements required by the stormwater drainage plan, weed management plan, fire protection plan, or approach permits. And B, utilities abutting and available to each lot, electrical and telephone shall be underground. Number 12, prior to filing the final plat, the applicant shall A, provide proof that all taxes and special assessments assessed and levied on the property are paid for the current tax year, including any past delinquencies. And B, provide documentation, an abstract of title or platting certificate, showing that the applicant is the lawful owner of the property with the apparent authority to subdivide the same, showing the names of lien holders or claimants of record and the written consent to the subdivision by the owners of the land, if other than the applicant, and any lien holders or claimants of record against the land. The applicant is financially responsible for actual outside engineering, consulting, professional, and or contracted service fees, etc., at the sole discretion of the county for additional review and or final plat approval of the proposed subdivision. This preliminary approval shall be enforced for not more than 3 calendar years. And that should probably be struck, that first one, I'm sorry, that's redundant. I put it in there twice just to make sure. At the end of this period, the governing body may, at the request of the subdivider, extend its approval for a mutually agreed upon period of time. Any mutually agreed upon extension must be in writing and dated and signed by the members of the governing body and the subdivider or subdivider's agent. The governing body may issue more than one extension. A party as defined by 763625 MCA who is aggrieved by a decision of the governing body may, within 30 days after this decision, appeal to the Broadwater County District Court.
Okay. So I guess I noticed one small error on the map. Not that it's super important at this point, but they've identified this existing cafe down here. I think it's actually a home, isn't it?
It's a resident.
It's a residence.
Oh, okay. I was not aware of that.
Are you talking about the yard? Farms on the 50? The-
Yeah, it's next to it's just going to be east of the sewer lagoon. You see it, Nicole?
Let me not be looking at this one. Drawing. Oh, no, I pulled out the one. Okay.
Okay.
So that's a resident, not be identified as such.
That's a residence, and the cafe is in the livestock.
Yeah, cafe is up there.
And does it show the stockyards? Right, it does show that on there.
It does show,
Just
yeah,
that,
it shows,
okay.
it shows.
Yes, yes, you're right.
Mhm. So I have a question for Mr. Olson. The loop road that you have proposed there, is it just gonna be a gravel road, or are you planning to pave it, or what are you thinking?
It'll be a gravel road.
Be a gravel road, okay. And then you'll work with, our road department for the approach. It'll have to be paved back a specific amount,
Right.
offset off the road.
We'll take care of that water.
Okay.
Was that map in the front of your book?
Yes, it was.
I don't have that one in my application, okay.
Do you have any other questions on the map, right?
No, I don't have any question on that. There's some stuff in the application where I believe there was 5 of them that referred to Gallatin County where it should have been Broadwater County.
Yeah. The first one I found was in 3.4.
And that's in the covenants. So when you submit your final covenants, just make sure that Gallatin is changed to Broadwater in those 5 locations.
Do you have a copy of it there?
Yeah.
So you see what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. So the next question I guess I had was on page 11 on setbacks, 7.1. The setback for all structures except fences shall be, and it's left blank. So that we fill it in?
Page 11 of their covenant.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So these are not commission required covenants, so we, the county doesn't make that determination, but yeah, that will have to be filled in prior to final plat approval also.
The next one was page 14. Is that section 7? 1. Another reference to the Gallatin County Commission.
Mhm.
And then, page 21, 4-10. Another reference on there, second, sentence up from the bottom. Page 22, there were 2 references to Gallatin County again.
On 22?
Page 26.
Oh, okay. So I have the 2 on 26.
One there in the middle, and then down in, section 8, there's another reference there as well. Did you have anything else, Mike?
No.
Is there anything else, Mike?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to, accept the preliminary plat application for Headwaters Minor Supplement.
Okay, I'll just second that. Motion been made and seconded to, approve the primary plat approval for Headwaters Minor subdivision. Any further comment? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carried.
I am going to alter this that first paragraph.
When does this come back then?
Whenever they,
They get all this stuff.
whenever they have 3 years. Whenever that is complete, and then we'll bring them on. I will, make a copy of this signed document. Other than that. Yeah, that is, yeah.
Right, good luck, you guys.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is Cactus Flats.
Do you have your submittals on Cactus Flats, or do you need a large copy on the table? You have yours. And with Cactus Flats, we did hold a public hearing, and so, I do have public comment to, letters that were submitted. And I need to read into the record. There's something here to do that before we define the factor act after. Preference.
You probably don't have a preference.
Okay, so I'll read through this document first, and then, I do have.
Is this the same letter that we all received?
Same, yes. Well, I think so. I didn't open your mail, and so I'm reading mine. If
Okay.
you just follow along with yours,
Okay.
and just make sure, then that way we don't have to read it in another time,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Very good.
Tim, do you want a copy of this? Tim? Yeah, copy. And so you have your submittal documents, the plat, and your findings of fact and order. Okay. Start on page 2. This is the findings of fact and order for the Cactus Flats subsequent minor subdivision preliminary plat dated February 10th, 2020. Date of application was February 10th, 2020. Date of sufficiency, February 14th, 2020. However, due to COVID-19, the developers granted an extension for the review timeline. The public hearing was held on June 2nd, 2020, and the review period will end June 30th of 2020. The applicants are Kevin Ashley Collin and Jennifer Dunman of Bozeman, Montana, and the applicant's representative, Bernadette Swenson of Townsend, Montana. The proposed subdivision is located off of A.B. Cook Road, approximately 8.5 miles northwest of the city of Townsend, Montana. This property was previously subdivided and is known as the amended plat of the third edition Silas Acres subdivision number 2. Since this is a subsequent minor subdivision of record, the review process is similar to that of a major subdivision. The developers intend to create 2 lots from an existing 9.43 acre parcel. The minimum lot size proposed is 4.71 acres and the maximum lot size is 4.72 acres. The required preliminary review fee of $1,700, the weed inspection fee of $140 have both been paid. Both lots proposed are subject to DEQ review. No homeowners association is proposed at this time. Existing covenants exist for this property and are included in the preliminary plat application as item number 13. Review is performed pursuant to the Montana Subdivision and Platting Act, section 76.3101 through 76.3614 Montana Codes Annotated, and the Broadwater County Subdivision Regulations. The proposed preliminary plat, Cactus Flat Subsequent Minor Subdivision, as submitted by the applicants, together with required supplementary plans and information, appear to satisfy the requirements of these regulations and comply with the Broadwater County Growth Policy Plan dated July 2003. I just want to make a note there because this was brought up to the planning board member. Yes, the new growth policy plan has been adopted, but it was adopted after this subdivision was submitted, so they fall under the old growth policy plan.
Okay.
A vicinity map as well as a preliminary plat is provided in the preliminary plat application.
No rock outcroppings or the presence of bedrock have been identified on the property. The nearest open water body is the Canyon Ferry Lake Reservoir, which is approximately a half a mile to the east. The proposed development is not in an area subject to flood hazard. Each lot will be served by an individual well. Well logs in this area show an acceptable water source at a depth of 400 to 430 feet with flow rates of 20 to 30 gallons per minute. DEQ will review the lots for well locations. Individual wastewater treatment systems are proposed for both lots. The typical soils in the proposed subdivision are identified as Radersburg Very Cobbly Loam 2 to 5% slopes. The Radersburg series consists of deep, well-drained soils formed in gravelly and cobbly old alluvium. Permeability is moderate and the available moisture capacity is low. These soils are considered suitable for on-site wastewater treatment systems. The soils information and proposed wastewater treatment systems will be reviewed by the Montana Department of Environmental Quality for the adequacy and impact of the wastewater treatment systems on groundwater quality. DEQ will issue a determination of non-significant impacts and a certificate of subdivision approval, which must be presented to the county for recordation of the final plat. Lot owners will be responsible for disposal of their own solid waste. Subdivision residents will have the option of hiring an independent contractor to pick up their solid waste or transport it themselves to the Broadwater County Transfer Station, Winston Canister Site, or the Townsend Canister Site. There are no existing drainages on the proposed subdivision property, and since no new roads are proposed, no roadway drainages shall be constructed. Current use of this parcel is vacant subdivision land. This property is not considered prime farmland, even if it were irrigated. Therefore, the proposed subdivision should not have an effect on agricultural productivity since it is not currently utilized for any agricultural purposes. The responsibility to maintain boundary fences will be the individual landowners. The developer will be required to control any noxious weeds until the property is turned over to the subsequent landowners. Even though this subdivision is a subsequent minor subdivision, an environmental assessment is not required since it lies within an area covered by the Broadwater County Growth Policy Plan. Per the Broadwater County subdivision regulations, the requirement for preparing an EA does not apply when the proposed subdivision is totally within an area covered by a growth policy adopted pursuant to section 76.1601 through 76.1606 MCA. Supporting documentation and maps are included in the preliminary plat application as item number 22. No falls, slides, or slumps, or adverse soil, rock, mud, or snow have been identified on the property. No rock outcroppings have been identified either. The property is located within the Intermountain Seismic Belt that extends through western Montana and frequently produces small earthquakes and has previously developed some major earthquakes. Property damage and risk are minimized with construction techniques and earthquake planning. There are no marsh, shrub, or forest lands located on the property. There are no trees or vegetation cover. Existing vegetation consists of light native grasses and some prickly pear cactus. No critical plant species have been identified. Existing vegetation will only be disturbed for necessary construction of driveways, utilities, and structures. Any construction disturbance will be reseeded with an approved grass seed mix. The weed management plan is in the process of being developed with assistance by the Broadwater County Weed Coordinator to control and prevent the growth of noxious weeds. Wildlife such as antelope, deer, upland game birds, other small birds, snakes, rabbits, fox, and coyote occasionally utilize the proposed subdivision. However, the use is infrequent due to the lack of cover in prime feeding areas, as well as the close proximity to nearby residential development and a busy highway. Therefore, the impacts to wildlife should be minimal. A letter was sent to the Montana Historical Society on September 16, 2019 to determine if there are any known historical, cultural, or archaeological sites that may be affected by the proposed development. A response letter enclosed in the preliminary plat application as item number 33 states that there has been one previously recorded site within the designated search locale, that being the historic A.B. Cook silos. However, those silos are not located on this property. If cultural resource should be discovered, MHS will be notified. Access to all lots will be off of A.B. Cook Road, which is a county road traversing the south boundary of the proposed subdivision. Utility service will be provided by Northwestern Energy. Natural gas service is not currently available. The proposed subdivision is in the Broadwater County Rural Fire District jurisdiction. The distance from the city of Townsend Fire Hall to the subdivision is approximately 8.5 miles. The distance from the Winston Fire Hall to this subdivision is approximately 5.5 miles. According to a letter addressed to the Broadwater County Rural Fire Department dated September 16, 2019, the developer is requesting to pay the per lot cash in lieu of water supply fee of $1,000 per lot, payable at the time of lot sale and closing on each lot. This proposal has been agreed to by the Fire Chief Ed Schindel on September 26, 2019. The Broadwater County Sheriff's Department will provide law enforcement services. The Sheriff's Department is located approximately 8.5 miles from the proposed subdivision. The Broadwater Health Center, also located in Townsend, will provide both ambulance and emergency medical services to the subdivision residents. The proposed subdivision is served by the Townsend schools. The subdivision could account for potentially 3 students according to figures obtained from the Broadwater County Growth Policy Plan. The potential for new students from this development will most likely not have an impact on existing bus routes. Lands in all directions of this property are residential subdivision. Since the property is bordered on the south by the moderately traveled A.B. Cook Road, and nearby to the east lies the Broadwater County-owned Airway Landing Strip, these could potentially pose a serious risk to the safety of the subdivision residents, especially to children and domestic animals. These risks can be mitigated by proper fencing and homeowner awareness. Since this is a subsequent minor subdivision, no parkland dedication is required pursuant to 763609(3) MCA. It is hereby ordered that the preliminary plat for Cactus Flat subsequent minor subdivision is approved subject to the conditions listed below. Final plat approval shall be contingent upon the completion and compliance with these conditions. Number 1, plans for sewage treatment and water supply shall be submitted to the Montana Department of Environmental Quality for review and approval. The certificate of subdivision approval shall be filed with the final plat. 2, the stormwater drainage plan shall be submitted to DEQ for review and recommendation. All specifications and requirements of the approved plan shall be met. 3, prior to any development, driveway application and approach permits shall be requested from the department. All requirements of an approved permit shall be met. Number 4, the applicant shall contribute 2/50ths of the cost to upgrade the existing road, A.B. Cook Road, and Pay Dirt Lane to Broadwater County subdivision road standards for a number 1 local road. It shall be required that they obtain a current estimate. Number 5, the applicant will be required to submit the preliminary and final plat drawings in electronic format to Broadwater County in ArcGIS, AutoCAD, or MicroStation format. Additional materials may be requested by the county in electronic format to facilitate review of application materials. 6, plans for the location and installation of individual mailboxes shall be reviewed and approved by the United States Postal Service prior to installation. 7, the applicant and the Fire Protection Authority having jurisdiction shall use their best efforts to draft a fire protection plan specifically for this subdivision in accordance with the Broadwater County subdivision regulations. The plan shall be equally acceptable to the FPHJ, the applicant, and the county governing authority. The plan shall adequately address the fire risk analysis, all findings of fact, and appropriate mitigation measures. In the event the parties are unable to come to agreement by the final plat submittal, the applicant shall become eligible to provide the per lot cash in lieu fee for water supply as may be defined in the Broadwater County subdivision regulations in effect at the time of submittal. 8, prior to any development and/or soil disturbance, a weed management plan for the proposed development shall be submitted to the county weed district for review and approval. All specifications and requirements of the approved plan shall be met. 9, the book and page reference to the restrictive covenants filed with the county clerk and recorder shall be indicated on the face of the final plat. In addition, restrictive covenants revocable or alterable only with the consent of the Board of County Commissioners shall be placed upon the property and shall provide for the following. A, per the subdivision application, all lots shall be used for residential purposes only. B, notification of the potential health risk from radon concentrations, and that such risk can be evaluated through soil tests and mitigated through radon abatement techniques incorporated into structures. C, a notification that all dwelling units within the subdivision should be constructed to specifications which meet or exceed equivalent provisions in the applicable state building code for this seismic zone, which is Zone 3. D, notification of the potential degradation of existing emergency services due to the potential for growth in a rural area. E, any additional replacement or relocated utility lines shall be installed underground in accordance with county subdivision regulations unless otherwise determined by the utility provided. F, any exterior lighting shall be directed downward to minimize visibility beyond the property lines. G, notifications of presence of agricultural operations in the vicinity. H, a waiver of the right to protest to join a special district for the purpose of providing community water and/or wastewater treatment system improvements and/or maintenance. I, a restrictive covenant binding the landowner, any heirs, successors, and assigns, and all future owners of property within the subdivision, agreeing therein to hold Broadwater County harmless and indemnify Broadwater County from all claims, demands, obligations, suits, causes of action, damages, and liability, including the county's costs and attorney's fees, arising in any manner whatsoever out of or relating to the existence, use, operation, repairing, and maintenance of the following. Subitem 1, earthquake fault zone and any seismic activity, and number 2, water availability. J, each lot shall be maintained in a clean, attractive, and weed-free manner. Noxious weeds must be pulled, sprayed, or cut prior to seed maturity. K, a prohibition of the storage of foods, garbage, or continuous feeding of domestic pets outdoors or other activities that creates an attractive nuisance for wildlife species. A, or alfalfa storage and feeding are not prohibited where livestock are permitted. L, lots shall only allow for livestock if a small acreage livestock management plan is reviewed and approved by the county extension agent and submitted to the county. Each lot owner shall be required to create and adhere to their own livestock management plans. M, all cats and dogs must be restrained, penned, or otherwise under the control of their owner at all times. N, address numbers shall be clearly marked at the driveway entrance to each lot and be easily identified from the road. Prior to filing the final plat, the following improvements shall be installed or otherwise guaranteed. A, any necessary improvements required by the stormwater drainage plan, weed management plan, fire protection plan, or approach permits. and B, utilities abutting and available to each lot, electrical and telephone shall be underground. If said improvements are not installed prior to final plat, then the applicant shall enter into a written subdivision improvements agreement with Broadwater County guaranteeing the construction and installation of such improvements, and shall provide an acceptable financial security guarantee in accordance with county subdivision regulations appendix E. Number 11, prior to filing the final plat, the applicant shall A, provide proof that all taxes and special assessments assessed and levied on the property are paid for the current tax year, including any past delinquencies, and B, provide documentation, an abstract of title or platting certificate showing that the applicant is the lawful owner of the property with the apparent authority to subdivide the same, showing the names of lien holders or claimants of record and the written consent to the subdivision by the owners of the land, if other than the applicant, and any lien holders or claimants of record against the land. The applicant is financially responsible for actual outside engineering, consulting, professional and/or contracted service fees, etc., at the sole discretion of the county for additional review and/or final plat approval of the proposed subdivision. Preliminary plat approval of Cactus Flat subsequent minor subdivision shall be enforced for 3 calendar years. At the end of this period, the governing body may, at the request of the subdivider, extend its approval for a mutually agreed upon period of time. Any mutually agreed upon extension must be in writing and dated and signed by the members of the governing body and the subdivider or subdivider's agent. The governing body may issue more than one extension. A party is defined by 763625 MCA who is aggrieved by a decision of the governing body may, within 30 days after this decision, appeal to the Broadwater County District Court. Would you like me to read the public comment letters at this time?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the first one I'm going to read, this is an email from a Mr. James Zerschmied. This was sent on Thursday, May 28th, 2020 to myself, Nicole Brown. Yeah.
We're gonna do this for public comment. You wanna do that now? Or wait till after you have public comment?
I'd like to listen to it all.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Okay. All right, so this letter is dated May 28th, 2020. It's addressed to myself, Nicole Brown, regarding the Cactus Flat subsequent minor subdivision. Dear Ms. Brown, in response to your letter dated May 18th, 2020, regarding the proposed subsequent minor subdivision, Cactus Flats minor subdivision, please be advised that I vehemently oppose any subdivision of above referenced property. The zoning of above referenced property is for a single-family residence and was the deciding factor when I purchased my land, Lot 1, Silo Subdivision Number 6, Phase 1, Broadwater County, Montana, at 250 Pay Dirt Lane, Townsend, Montana. Any zoning change or variance would allow additional dwellings and outbuildings to obscure the view of the mountains and would also increase dust up resulting from the increased traffic on all roads leading to and from my property. Please see attached photo for the current dust ups on road immediately in front of my property, and this is without the proposed subdivision. On behalf of myself and my neighbors, we look forward to the board unanimously deciding against the subdivision. If you require any additional information, please reach me, and include this phone number, but I'm not going to read that into the record. Sincerely, James Zerschmied. And I didn't have a photo attached to that email. Let's see what she did. Okay. All right, this next one is dated May 26th, 2020. It's again addressed to me, Nicole Brown, regarding the Cactus Flat subdivision. Dear Ms. Brown, I strongly object to dividing up the parcel of land located on Section 27, Township 8 North, Range 1 East, Broadwater County, Montana. I am a full-time resident on the adjacent lot. I bought this lot because it was next to a bird refuge and a quiet neighborhood. They have made a motorcycle track for these kids to ride on right outside my back door. They also ride their motorcycles up and down Eddie Road until after 10 p.m. at night every weekend. The purpose of subdividing this 9.43 acre is to have 2 summer homes at Canyon Ferry Lake, not to be a full-time resident of Broadwater County. They have been in violation of the sanitation codes for the past year by having 3 campers on this one lot all summer. Again, I wish to voice that I strongly object to the division of this lot. Sincerely, Bob Perno of 300 Homestead Lane, Townsend, Montana. And this next one I'm about to read, I believe you received letters from Mr. Farrington. And so if you would just follow along with your letter, if your letter is different than mine, then we'll have to read your letter into the record, but I suspect it's probably similar. Do you also have these photos, or do you need me to pass them around? You have those. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So this letter is dated May 25th, 2020 to Nicole Brown regarding Cactus Flats subsequent minor subdivision. This is a letter in opposition to the approval of the Cactus Flats minor subdivision. This is the second proposed hearing on this property split. After the first notice on 2/28/20 in the Broadwater Reporter, we were finally able to receive a phone call from Nicole Brown. After a 15+ minute conversation with her, she informed us that she was canceling the first hearing set for March 18th, 2020, and is going to arrange for the commissioners to visit the area and then reschedule. I have not been able to reach her by email or phone since. We discussed the many mini RV parks in the Silo subdivision. We discussed the 2 RV trailers that sat at this location all summer. One was never moved, and the other left for the winter. We discussed the fact that this property has no water, electricity, or septic system. The RV that never moved has 2 adults and 3 small children living in them nearly every weekend. There also has never been any visible portable sewage containers at this location. We also discussed the motocross track, which they were in the process of building and using while they are on site, and the neighborhood impact of that. Nicole, on her own, said that this subdivision was approved for single-family residential housing. We felt at the conclusion of the conversation that she was very supportive. We have now found out and have been discussing with others that the rescheduled hearing is June 2nd. I personally and my wife will not be able to attend, as I will be in a 2-week quarantine preparing for a preoperative meeting at St. Patrick Hospital with Dr. Mack, a neurosurgeon in Missoula. They have pushed up this appointment for me and requested this. I owe it to him, his staff, and St. Pat's due to this COVID-19. I am also requesting that you again cancel this meeting. I ask this for a specific reason, which I will outline below. After a 5 p.m. visit last evening, Sunday, May 24th, from the wife of one of the owners, her name is Ashley Dunman. My wife and I were barbecuing a beer butt chicken when I asked my wife to video the group of motorcycle riders running around the motocross, which she did. I'd like for all of you to see them, as we get to listen every weekend. About 20 minutes or so later, Ashley Dunman came by and introduced herself. They had seen my wife standing on our deck taking videos. This woman did everything in her power to convince us that there was nothing wrong with them having this for their children, and obviously now other visiting weekend children. She did confirm that it was not okay for them to do this where they live in Bozeman. She made comments that this is a recreational area, and that is what this subdivision is for. I think she was referring to the other mini RV parks. I'm not sure. My wife informed her that the lake was a recreational area and not this subdivision, and always residential from the beginning. She also suggested that anybody that wanted to could buy them out. I informed her I am 74 years old and don't need 10 more acres. She was obviously becoming somewhat frustrated with me, as I was not willing to confirm to her that I fully approved of their motocross. It was then that she hit us with something I at first did not believe, but later got the impression that she wasn't the only person present when they discussed this motocross track with Nicole Brown. Nicole informed her, and she is accepting as approval, that they could in fact do the motocross as long as the unlicensed children did not ride the cycles on the public roads, which they do frequently, sometimes without adult supervision and sometimes with. The fact here is that she claims that they researched the covenants in the subdivision, and nothing in the covenant excludes motocross tracks, and after receiving the affirmative comments from Nicole Brown, they then and only then purchased the 10 acres with the sole intent of having motocross for their children to play at. My wife and I and 24 other neighbors were faced with a similar situation close to 30 years ago at our home at the base of the Sapphire Mountains. These issues get very expensive fast. Every property owner in this subdivision should be contacted and informed of what this property has been purchased for. The reason being, as it's not only the 3 directly attached properties on the west side, it's that property values will be severely affected, and how about all the other property owners across Pater and beyond. The one clause that they neglected to pay attention to in these covenants is number 6, nuisances and offensive activities forbidden. But then maybe they really don't care. The dust, the noise will eventually have a rather severe impact on many of us. Not everybody receives the Broadwater Reporter paper to see these notices. My wife and I purchased and constructed our home and garage at 360 Homestead Lane in March 2016. We have a substantial amount of cash invested in this property. We purchased this lot for the lake view and the fact we felt one large storage building couldn't affect our view too much. We never imagined a motocross track 500 feet from our back deck in a residential subdivision. If Nicole Brown did in fact inform them that what they were purchasing that 10 acres for would be okay, shouldn't more than just Kernauer, whose property is directly above them, and whoever owns the Zito property that we think lives on the east coast of the US be informed? Ashley Dunman informed us that we should be more acceptable to change and that Broadwater County has a growth plan and welcomes people buying here. By then, our barbecue propane had run out cooking the beer butt chicken, and I asked her to leave so I could change the tank and finish cooking our evening meal. About 15 minutes later, we watched as 3 motorized bikes came rushing down Patriot Lane from the silos area, and they whipped into the motocross to the racing office, their camper. They then, with others, raced around the track numerous times, and then they drove onto the adjoining lot below us and lined up in defiance, I guess, to our reluctance in accepting their activities. They lined up in a row and stared at us for several minutes, and then off back to their motocross track. My wife and I both felt bad for her after asking her to leave. She, to my knowledge, only lied to us once, when she denied that there were gasoline-fueled engines on the track. It was only when I informed her that the sound was on the video did she then remember that she had trailered 2 or 3 motorcycles when she came from Bozeman that morning. The issue that strikes us the most here is the ignorance and total lack of respect for the neighbors. She actually made comments that we should have contacted them before they purchased and let them know we didn't want a motocross track in our backyard. We strongly suggest that this meeting be again rescheduled, that the commissioners all come out to the site and view for themselves. View the proximity of our homes to this motocross track. How can something like this be considered, much less approved from a distance? Approving this will set a precedent for the future of this community. Approve this and we'll have the same issues with the 10 acres behind us. Also, a copy of a July 25, 2018 letter is enclosed for everyone. Whatever happened to that concern? RV campgrounds in this residential subdivision. It's signed Jim Farrington and Chris Farrington of 360 Homestead Lane. The second part of this letter, I have a letter from the Broadwater County Board of Health, dated July 25, 2018, regarding unlicensed RV campgrounds in Broadwater County. To whom it may concern, it has come to the attention of the Broadwater County Board of Health that the Silos Acres subdivisions and other properties on the west side of Canyon Ferry Reservoir have been overtaken by recreational vehicles. Subdivision lots are being used as RV campgrounds. This correspondence is to inform you that you are in violation of the Certificate of Subdivision Approval, Section 764101 MCA, which is issued by the Montana Department of Environmental Quality when a subdivision or subdivided lots are reviewed by the department and approved to remove sanitary restrictions. This statement is a legal document that is filed with the subdivision plat or certificate of survey. In this document, it states that each lot should be used for one single-family dwelling. Pursuant to MCA 764130, deviation from the certificate of subdivision approval, a person may not construct or use a facility that deviates from the certificate of subdivision approval until the reviewing authority, DEQ, has approved the deviation. It is the responsibility of DEQ to enforce this requirement, not the Broadwater County Board of Health. However, if the property has a well or septic system not being utilized as permitted, or no means of wastewater disposal, then these compliance issues are addressed by the County Health Authority. For example, if a property has obtained a septic permit for a 3-bedroom house and has anything more than their own RV connected to the system, they are in violation of the county septic regulations. 3 recreational vehicles on one lot are not considered bedrooms. If a guest comes to your property with their RV and stays the weekend with their own water supply and wastewater holding tanks, that is an acceptable practice. However, you cannot have numerous RVs parked on your lot for the entire summer season. Permanent residents in this area purchased lots and built homes with the understanding that the Silos Acres subdivisions were approved as residential and/or commercial use subdivisions. This past year, the county has received numerous complaints from homeowners that are unhappy with looking out their windows and seeing a large accumulation of trailers, boats, tents, and campfires, in addition to the excessive noise and traffic created by these campgrounds. If you wish to operate an RV park, then you must submit an application to Broadwater County for review as a subdivision and DEQ to address water and wastewater requirements. If you are supplying water to these RVs, you must be testing your water supply at least twice a year to ensure potability. If you are providing water to more than 24 persons on a regular basis, then you meet the definition of a public water supply. If you have constructed RV spaces that provide electricity, water, and sewer connections, then you must obtain a state trailer RV campground license, just like the Silos RV Park is required by law to do so. Furthermore, a septic tank cannot be used as an RV disposal or dump station, as black water is considered high-strength waste and contains chemicals that can destroy the bacteria population that is needed for a properly functioning septic tank. In some cases, it may cause premature failure of your septic system. In the state of Montana, gray water is defined as wastewater and must be disposed of into a septic system for proper treatment and not allowed to simply drain out of the RV through a hose and onto the ground. The Broward County Board of Health requests that you comply with the certificate of subdivision approval issued by DEQ for your subdivision. Remove extra RVs and respond in writing to septic water issues addressed in this letter on or before August 31st, 2018. If you need a copy of the COSA, please come to the courthouse or email your county sanitarian. She can provide this document to you. If you fail to respond to this letter, the BOH will issue a formal notice of violation to those property owners that are not in compliance with current septic regulations. The county will continue to monitor the number of RVs on each lot through the remainder of the summer and fall. In addition, the DEQ Enforcement Division will be advised of the landowners who are non-compliant and have deviated from the COSA. And it's signed Jeannie Steele, who was the former chairperson of the Broward County Board of Health.
So I see that letter was sent out in July of 2018.
Correct.
I guess, do you remember anything about the letter? Do you recall?
Who was that letter? Is that letter sent to someone?
Well, I guess that's kind of part of my question. We don't know who
I believe it
was
was
sent to, or
I believe it was sent to all of the residents of the
All the
silos,
residents
and
out there.
there was extensive public hearings held in this room regarding that at the Board of Health level.
Yeah, because we had people that got the letter that only had one trailer on there or something like that. Yeah, I remember
I think it
the
was just
hearings and everything. 'Cause
the
that-
whole
Those are the
area.
letters that were, that's the basis of the letters that Sean had to go to DEQ.
Was your letter identical to that?
yes,
Okay.
it was. Yeah, thank you. So Sean already has a copy of it, so this is it.
Yeah, I believe you should have a copy of all that stuff.
Snowball, I could look out for a second. I just wonder. This one shows. Picture nothing to look like. I know exactly what it right there. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I guess, Nicole, the question for you is, how do we proceed with this, to get all these issues resolved?
So at the public hearing, there was an extensive amount of back and forth between the family, the Dunmans, and the neighbors. I believe, at least through that conversation, the discussion of the underage drivers driving on the road has been mitigated. Our sheriff's office was involved. They came out and talked to the parents and, resolved that issue. It's very difficult to, even though I guess I don't know how to say this, we as individuals can determine, or we can decide for ourselves what is a nuisance activity, right? But you also have to remember that this is not a commission-required covenant. So if the motocross track, which I think is the big issue with this development, first of all, there's no determination or no definition of what's a nuisance activity. I believe nuisance is, up to each individual to determine what's a nuisance. Maybe the birds chirping, maybe that's a nuisance too. Maybe motocross, maybe, someone working carpentry in their garage. Nuisance is a very personal decision to make. So where Mr. Farrington's letter is not wrong, their covenants do state that no nuisance, or I believe it said nuisance or obnoxious activities. There's no real definition on that. And it's not a commission-required covenant. So that's just one issue I want you to kind of think about. Also, we don't have zoning in our county, so we can't tell people what they can and cannot do on their own property. I did speak with Sergeant Buck on the children even riding, these gas-powered motorcycles and four-wheelers on their own property. And he said, as long as they are wearing protective equipment, helmets and such, and stay on their own property, the law, as in law enforcement, doesn't have any jurisdiction, only if they enter onto the roadway. So with that being said, there really is no basis that I can see in law for this development to be denied because of the motocross track on the property. I believe both of you went out there separately and looked at this parcel, is that correct? Okay. As did I, and you can see the disturbance. When I was out there, they weren't out there, on the motocross. There were the two campers there, and I could see the motorcycles there, but there was no activity taking place. So I don't know where your basis in law is to deny it based on this activity, because this really is, it's on their personal property.
So, so let me ask this. So we haven't even approved this.
No.
But they have campers on there.
Mm-hmm.
They've obviously put in approaches already. No approach permits.
They did apply for approach permits. I don't know where that's at in the process. They did apply. I did receive those from both of them. I did receive 2 approach permits in the fee and turn that over to Public Works.
Approved. I mean, that's the
Right.
So if they haven't been approved, they shouldn't be installed.
Correct. Yeah. Right.
So I see that as an issue. And then vegetation's been disturbed. So according to the weed plan, vegetation isn't supposed to be disturbed, correct?
Yeah. According to every weed plan that we've seen previous to this one, which this one hasn't been written yet, but yes.
So how could they, present a weed plan if they've already done that? They disturb the vegetation to make the motocross track.
Yeah.
I think those are the things I'm looking at.
And that would be a good question for Jessica too, regarding the weed plan. According to the Dunmans, when they disturbed that vegetation, they mostly were using a skid steer to scrape off the prickly pear cactus off of the top of the ground. Is that an allowable function, I guess, according to the weed management plan? That I don't know.
Well, I guess in my mind, there's still questions that need to be answered.
So you're saying that this number 6 that they refer to as not a commissioner required covenants, but is number 1 a commissioner required covenants that it only be used for residential lots?
So you're talking about their covenants in the book, right? Not the commissioner required covenants I read in the findings about. Okay, just to make sure.
Yeah.
Item number 13. So none of these covenants are commission required covenants in this book. None of these are commission required covenants. However, I look at these, the planning board looks at these, and you should look at these as well to make sure that we are not going against these covenants. Even though they're not your covenants to enforce, you shouldn't be allowing a use that goes against what the covenants speak of. So number 3, I see what you're saying, single family dwelling. And then if you look at number 5, dividing of individual tracts. The lots platted may not be subdivided into smaller than 4-acre tracts, which they are not.
Right. It was a little above.
So I would feel that they are not going against the covenants because they clearly called out this number 5, dividing of individual tracts.
I guess my thought is, how do we approve something that clearly goes against covenants that the subdivision has before it's even been developed?
Can I ask which covenant you think it's going against?
Well, the one family dwelling unit for one. And course, I guess we don't know what their plans are for it. They've already put in approaches, obviously. They'll receive the permit for that.
So if you look at 13, extended and proposed covenants, on restated covenants, says used for residential only inside the above described real property, herein referred to as real property, shall be used for residential only.
I'm sorry, what number are you at on the restated?
Section 13, the exposed and proposed, existing and proposed covenants.
Right, and which number? I mean, are you?
There's no number on it. It's the, it's under unrestated covenants, 37,365, that are used for residential only inside.
Okay, that's number 3, yeah.
So that says that it should be used for residential only. You're not allowing to put a motocross on a lot. You're allowed to put a residence on a lot.
Is it a commercial motocross or is it personal use?
For personal use.
I don't think that's a conflict. I mean,
If
if they're doing competitions and there's entry fees and there's crowd and there's prizes, then that's a commercial. But if it's their own kids want to ride motorcycles, I don't see that's a conflict.
The Dunmans, unfortunately couldn't be here this morning. They were planning to, but they called right beforehand and couldn't make it. But going back to public comment, just in answer to some of these issues as they were here for the public hearing, like they said, they never intended to have a quote unquote motocross track. It wasn't the reason they purchased it, and they definitely didn't ask Nicole if that's what they could purchase it for. They purchased it to split in half to have 2 single family dwellings. They said their kids, I believe they said their kids didn't even get their 4-wheelers till after they had purchased the property. And they said that, and like I said, I'm just restating what they said at the public hearing. Their plans are to build 2 residential homes. And they said at that point in time, there wouldn't even be room for the motocross. They weren't planning on leaving a motocross there. Whether their kids continue to drive there on the property, that I don't know. But just stating what they stated at the public hearing, that their intentions are to split this into 2 parcels. And they're, I guess, 2 brothers, and they purchased, and their families, and they purchased the property together in order to split to build 2 homes. We also did state if there are further questions, they should be here next week.
Okay.
But something just came up and I could not make it today.
Yeah, I think so.
On the table for next week then?
Yeah.
For the information then.
I'll make a motion to table this until next week. John's gonna be present.
I'll second that motion. Any vote?
Not online.
Okay, motion made and seconded to table the Cactus Flats Matter subdivision. Preliminary approval until next week. Possibly the others can be here. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you, Nicole, thank you, Bernadette. Is there anything else, anybody? We'll adjourn. 11:59. Oh, no, I'm sorry, we are not adjourned. We're gonna have, well, we're gonna go in recess. We have closed door meeting with the county attorney, and then at 3 PM, we're canvassing the primary election.
So you're done with this meeting now?
So,
Okay.
resume at 3. Thank you.